Hello, everybody. Welcome again to Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. I'm Cody, and I'm here with Brett and Joe tonight. We're going to be talking some music tonight, but just wanted to kind of, if this is your first podcast or haven't been with us in a while, just kind of tell you where our Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing fond empire is at these days. We have expanded slightly in our presence online. So we have a new webpage that'll probably be up by the time this episode drops. That is located at Fond Podcast, FONDPODCAST.com, where you can hop on and learn a little bit about the hosts and some of the episodes and topics we've looked at, as well as a chance to pick up some super cool merchandise if you're interested in that type of thing for us. We also have a Twitter account that's kind of up and going and being updated sometimes now, and Facebook updates as well. I think Brett's going to have some TikToking for us here, perhaps coming up as well, now that he's back from Disney and he escaped. Yes. And still, all of your favorite streaming apps and things of that nature, you can find us on whatever you're listening to us on at the moment. And tell a friend about us if you think there's somebody who might enjoy our continual arguing or crappy taste that we have in many things that we discuss. But
speak for yourself, Cody.
Exactly, right? That all being said, let's hear what everybody's been up to since last we talked here. So let's kick it over to Brett. What have you been up to, Brett?
Well, I actually I didn't play like any games this week, which was odd.
Way to a dog.
But yeah, just that's the way it worked out, and didn't fit my schedule this week. But we've been watching a few shows lately. So we caught up since Mandalorian season 3 dropped its first episode, and now the second one's out. My wife and I went back and finally watched Book of Boba Fett because we understood that you needed to watch part of that to really understand where Mandalorian season 3 is at. And so we watched it. It was all right. It definitely, going back to what you guys talked about in our very first episode of this podcast, I agree with pretty much everything you guys said, that it was not great in the first several episodes. And then once Mando got into the series, then it was pretty darn good. So I think that's just how it was. But, on that, we watched season 4 of a show called You on Netflix. The first half of it came out about 2 weeks ago or something. And then the second half of it, they just dropped here a couple days ago. And that's one of our favorite shows. It's really great. It's crazy. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically following the story of this guy. It's told from his perspective. And there's a lot of internal monologue from him. But this guy is full on sociopath and with murdering tendencies. And it's really crazy because basically he's continuously trying to convince himself that he's a good person, and he just wants to be this good person and just be in love with somebody and just have a normal life. And yet somehow he always ends up in these these situations where he's oh man, I just gotta murderize this person because they're in my way.
Sounds interesting.
Murderize, I like that.
Yeah, so they got 4 seasons and all of them have been really good. This 4th season took a unexpected turn, not a crazy turn at the end, but I wasn't expecting it. Anyways, that's all been really good. And then by the time this episode comes out, we will, because we're still a week behind, I guess, in episodes here. So at the time of recording this, the season finale of The Last of Us comes out tomorrow. And I'm ready for that to maybe shed a tear or two on that. So we'll see. I have seen that the co-star of the show, Bella Ramsey, was in an interview and said, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but essentially she said that the finale was going to be very divisive between fans. And considering how great they've done with the rest, the series up to this point, I can't imagine that the writers went off some crazy tangent in the finale.
I mean, if without getting spoilery, but if they follow the like ending of the first game, that would probably be pretty divisive. So
that's
thinking maybe that's what they're.
That's kind of my over, like my bigger percentage of my thought is that she probably just means like the true ending of the game will just be a bit divisive for people. But there's a small part of me that's like screaming like, oh God, don't screw this up.
I'm really like, my biggest fear about that is I'm afraid that they're going to leave with a cliffhanger and like not give the full finale or something, because the episode is only like 43 minutes or something. It's like a weirdly short episode for the finale.
Yeah, there's
so like, I don't know how they could possibly do all of the things in that time.
Okay.
I mean, I guess we'll see. But like that's the thing that has me nervous about it, is the running time, because to do all the things, if they are going to follow the game, I feel like they would need to have like an hour and a half or something.
Right.
So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Or...
Did they get to the part where Will Smith's character dies yet?
Spoilers, I mean, geez, but no.
Oh.
We're not talking about the Academy Awards, which are tomorrow, Cody. We're talking about The Last of Us.
Oh. Fair enough.
So that's what I've been up to.
All right. Joe, how about yourself?
I have been up to some things.
Great. All right, let's move on.
All right, yay.
Go ahead. What have you been up to,
Joe? Game-wise, I'm still playing The Witcher 3. I was going to mention that every week. I love that game. I think I'm nearing the end of my replay, but other than that, watched a few things recently. Have been watching The Last of Us, which I've mentioned before, and Brett was just talking about. Whether you've played the game or not, that's like one of the best shows on TV. So like Brett said, hopefully they'll stick the landing. Last weekend, my wife and I watched a couple movies, one of which actually stars Bella Ramsey, who is the co-lead of The Last of Us. It's a movie on Amazon Prime called Catherine Called Birdie, which is kind of a fun, like, coming-of-age movie set in the Middle Ages. And Bella Ramsey plays, like, the daughter of this scummy lord in England, played by Andrew Scott, who people may know as either Moriarty from Sherlock or the sexy priest from Fleabag. But the premise of the movie is that her father, the scumbag lord, has kind of spent all their money and can't support their lifestyle. So he's trying to marry her out to like a rich person of some sort, like trying to entice someone to marry his daughter with the fact that they'll get like a title and whatnot. But she's like, as in The Last of Us, I think she's supposed to be 14 in the movie, and she's like super rebellious and absolutely doesn't want to marry some gross old man.
She has huge tracts of land.
Huge tracts of land. But it's a fun movie. Another movie we watched last weekend was Clerks 3.
How's that?
Mixed, I will say. I mean, I historically have been a Kevin Smith fan. The first Clerks is obviously iconic. I actually really liked Clerks 2. Like, I thought it was way better than it had any right to be. I would say Clerks 3 is the worst of the three, but, you know, if you're a fan, still worth watching. Like, it definitely made me feel some nostalgic feelings, and, you know, it's kind of interesting to see. It's basically, like, the entire movie is just inspired by his real-life heart attack. And so it's very much him kind of, like, working through his feelings about his existential crisis and whatnot on film. But I think it's worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of his previous movies. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention is a series that nobody else will probably ever watch because it's on Peacock. And nobody has Peacock.
Peacock. I sure don't.
But it's a show called Poker Face, which was actually created by Ryan Johnson. And I know he wrote and directed at least the first two episodes, and then
is that the Natasha show?
Yeah, so I think it was co-created with Natasha Lyonne, who's the star of the show. And the premise of the show is that her character is basically a human lie detector. So they never really explain it, but I don't need them to. But she has this ability where she can just tell if somebody's lying. And it's fun because it's like a case of the week show where, there's kind of a vague overarching story, but it is very episodic where each episode is its own, story. And it's not really a whodunit because every episode opens with us as the viewer seeing the crime that's committed. So far, they all involve murders. So we actually see the murder happen. But then the structure is that we see the murder happen, but then it turns out that Natasha Lyonne's character happens to be in close proximity to the murder that happened. And so she ends up getting involved and we see her kind of solve it and, bring the criminal to justice. But it's this weird, like, it feels like a throwback. Apparently it was heavily inspired by Columbo. And like, you can actually see that in her performance. She has like big Peter Falk energy. But it's big
like fucking energy.
It's like it's really funny, and they have like every episode has amazing guest stars. Like they have some fairly well-known actors showing up to play these roles, but it's really just a lot of fun. So I mean, if you have enjoyed any of Ryan Johnson's work, or if you just like a good old-fashioned episodic kind of crime show, it's definitely worth checking out.
Sweet. Lots of viewing, it sounds like, then, from everybody.
Yeah.
Let's see. I just had a couple things I'd mention here too. I've just got up to halfway through the double season finale of season 3 of Manifest, Brett. So I'm slowly catching up, but I've kind of tapered off watching that with other things I've been catching up on. Just caught up with Mandalorian tonight again, so back caught up again with that, and I've been playing a lot of hours of Assassin's Creed 2 this week as well, and that's been, now that I'm past the like introductory tutorial crap, it's kind of fun again now to just run around. I forgot that there's actually some really good platforming missions in those games, which is not something I ever associate them with, but like I was looking for like assassin tombs in some places around the city, and it was like, how do you get from point A to point B? It's like you got to run and jump and grapple and climb and bounce off the wall, and like there's actually some pretty solid platforming in some of the games, which I kind of had forgotten about. One thing I did remember about them though is I absolutely cannot stand in the games how you run around and like remotely come close to touching any of the surfaces, and he's like climbing up something, and then you're like, no, I just wanted to walk down the side of the street. Which is particularly frustrating because I just went around the last couple of days and got every treasure chest in the first city to like start bulking up of all this stuff behind the scenes and with the money. And then I was starting to do race components to the city, and the first race wasn't too bad. It took me like 4 or 5 tries to get through in the time limit. And then this second one I just did was like you have to hit 32 goals or gates, I guess, within like 2.5 or 3 minutes. And you're like running and jumping from roof to roof, etc. And then of course, like you'll fall, and then he'll suddenly start grabbing a wall just randomly to climb up, and you're like, damn it, I'm being timed. And so I haven't beaten that one yet. I was just trying that one before dinner tonight, but I'm enjoying that so far. Last thing for just 10 seconds, I wanted to throw a shout out to as I happened to wake up from my nap I took today, and I saw a little bit of the Billy Joel Stevie Nicks concert from was it New York, I think they were in, maybe, and watching Stevie Nicks break down crying on the stage while they had the images of her and Christine McVie from Fleetwood Mac in the background was kind of touching. The audience was all losing their shit, and that was November already that she passed on, but Stevie couldn't hold it together, which was hard to watch, but it was a touching moment at the same time. So
kind of surprised you would enjoy either of those artists.
I don't know why you would say that. I think we've had this discussion before, but yeah, Stevie's a queen.
I agree.
I don't know why she's touring with that drunk bum Billy Joel, but that's neither here nor there. Just kidding. He used to be a drunk bum. He can't afford that anymore. Till the concert's over. But anyway, sorry, Billy Joel, if you're listening to us, be sure to tag us when you put a response back on that.
I'm also sorry, Billy Joel. I love you.
You and Citric. Okay, well, we have a music episode for everybody today, as mentioned, and our Our artist tonight is Chris Cornell. Before we even get into him, every time we do one of these episodes, they always sound fantastic in my head, and then I realize like we bit off way more than I really was prepared to do for these, but they're really fun. But luckily we had like the week delay on the miscommunication last week, so basically had 2 weeks to get through 15 studio albums by Chris Cornell or Chris Cornell led projects, and then a couple singles here and there. And I mean, that's give or take 160 to 170 songs that were listened to. I don't know, people listen to parts of them or all of them or whatever. And then, as the hosts are listening to these things, then the real challenging thing we're talking about is trying to rank these songs against each other, because they have a lot of qualities that are, equivalent in some ways, but very different in other ways. And so to come up with the actual top 10 list, if you're listening to any of these podcasts where we do on the music countdowns like this, there's a hell of a lot of work that goes into it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So kudos to you guys for sticking out another one here with this one. So this is kind of a really interesting one with Cornell. So, he's, I guess, originally you might consider him more to be like one of the godfathers of grunge in the Seattle scene, and he's up there with some of those other famous bands. But then, of course, we know he had Soundgarden, he had Audioslave, he did a solo career for quite a while, and he had some side projects, Temple of Dog, and some other things here as well. Do you guys just want to say briefly, like, when did you start to listen to Cornell's music, or a band of his, I guess, maybe you probably got into it with? Early recollections on Cornell, Chris?
I'm not certain I could put a timeline as to when I became aware of Chris Cornell. So definitely, I mean, Soundgarden is one of those bands that I love, and that, it certainly was one of those that I was listening to, back in like the high school days. Oddly enough, I never owned any of their albums. Just one of those weird things that, like, it seemed like I should have, I just didn't for whatever reason. When they broke up, and then he joined in with the rest of the guys from Rage Against the Machine and formed Audioslave. I think I definitely became like more aware of the full body of work at that point, because it was a bit more accessible, and it was just out there a bit more at that point. So and that's what I actually owned. But I bought all three of Audioslave's albums, oddly enough. I listened to those a lot through like my college years, and I've been a big fan ever since. Not sure what else to say about that.
Okay. Joe, when did you get into the corny one himself?
It's it's funny because I feel like this has been a theme on every single music episode I've been part of, but my brother is and was a big Chris Cornell fan. He was a big Soundgarden fan back in the day. I feel like I was honestly a little bit young to get into Soundgarden, like when they were first hitting. I just looked, and their first album came out when I was 5.
No excuses.
I know. But I mean, like with some of the other artists we've talked about, my brother was a fan, and so like the music was kind of around, and I mean, I always kind of enjoyed it. I think the thing that really put them firmly on my radar was the Sega CD version of the video game Road Rash, which featured like multiple Soundgarden songs on the soundtrack. And it was kind of a big thing at the time that, because of the CD technology, you could have like actual music in the game.
High quality, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, spoiler alert, that game is going to be mentioned a couple times on my list. But yeah, I mean, kind of like Brett, I never really had any of their albums, but I always liked, specifically Soundgarden, and then, Chris Cornell more in general. I mean, he had just an incredibly unique voice, amongst the rock genre.
Yeah.
I would argue possibly one of the more iconic rock voices of all time. I mean, certainly of our age, since our lifetime. But yeah, it's just he was a voice, and like his music has just kind of been part of my life as long as I can remember. I mean, I feel like I kind of really started appreciating Soundgarden and Chris Cornell when I got a little bit older, like into my 20s. He's an artist who, as I got older and started getting into live music, I always kind of wanted to see live, but I just never got the opportunity. Which is something that I'll always be sad about. But yeah, I feel like he's just kind of, one of the sort of iconic legends of our time.
Yeah, I think I would have probably gotten into him and Soundgarden probably when Black Hole Sun came out, I'm sure, which looks like it's around 94, 95 here, with that really iconic video with the people with their faces that kind of stretched out in the real.
Oh, it was terrifying. I hated that video.
It really was. It really, really was. But Soundgarden's a band that like I fully, one of the reasons I like these episodes that we do is because I don't know that I had ever listened to a full Soundgarden album prior to this. I never had any either, Brett. I couldn't explain why I never had any of them either, but never did. And pretty sure I never listened to one all the way start to finish prior to the work for this. Like you, I think I have maybe at least the first two Audioslave albums. I had some of his singles when he was a solo artist, but I never had one of his solo albums. And I knew nothing about Temple of the Dog beyond the Hunger Strike song prior to this either. So this was, really eye-opening for me just to kind of hear his full discography and in the gamut of his career, which was, he died tragically. We'll say here about 6 years ago, but he put out quite a bit of stuff in that time period. Somebody else who was alive, making music for whatever that would be here, close to 30 years, I guess. Not everybody as a 30-year artist would have put out 15 full albums. Like that's one every 2 years, which basically means he kind of didn't take a lot of time off in there. He was always working on something. So he did leave us with a decent amount of material for us to go back and kind of listen to him, which is, one of the things I guess we can be thankful for as far as his career went. Just in terms of some other additional things about the man himself here, he has 17 Grammy Awards. He won 3 of those. Interestingly enough, in 95, he won both Best Hard Rock Performance for Black Hole Sun, and he won Best Metal Performance for Spoon Man off that same album. So that's kind of interesting how that
is interesting.
Works out sometimes. And then he didn't win again until 2019 for Best Rock Performance for When Bad Does Good. Which is 24 years apart from his previous win. So pretty crazy there. And then, we just kind of mentioned these all as well, but I think probably hit the scene biggest with Soundgarden when he came on, and they were active for some years and then kind of took some time off and came back again from 2010 to 2017. He was involved with them. Solo career was kind of in between bands, 2006 to 2017, and then 98 to 2000. And Audioslave was really just kind of a flash in the pan is the wrong word, but a very limited time span, I guess is what I'm saying, 2001 to 2007. I did just see on here, though, on his Wikipedia page, and I'm really disappointed I didn't research this till just now, but apparently he was a member of the satirical Western swing band Center for Disease Control Boys, which I'm going to have to look that up later because that sounds amazing.
Very curious.
Yes.
I like Western swing and I like satire and I like Chris Cornell. So
there you go. And then as mentioned, he did the one album here under the name Temple of the Dog, which was essentially a tribute to a friend that they had lost. But this is also a famous band because they had a young upstart rookie in the background by the name of Eddie Vedder, who did the backup vocals for that band. And I don't think he ever went on to do anything, but if
never heard of him,
anybody else knows anything, let me know on that. And then he's also got numerous, soundtrack and TV shows, movies. He's worked as a backup collaborator with vocals for a lot of different bands through the years. He's worked with people like Alice Cooper and Screaming Trees, and even Ann and Nancy Wilson of Heart, and some other people in here too. And he's kind of got everything. And then we mentioned also he was found dead in his hotel room in 2017. That was only about an hour after his Soundgarden concert that he had just put on. And it says here he just really was known for struggling with depression for most of his life. So, another one.
I hate to say it, but like going back and listening to a lot of these songs, one thought I had was like, I'm really not surprised that he killed himself. Like, I feel like his depression comes through in a lot of his lyrics.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely agree. You know, it's one of those things too, where I don't know if we've ever explored this topic I don't mean it to sound the way it's going to sound word for word here, but there's those people that are really tormented in life, and they're the ones who oftentimes have some of the best output with their career. You know, it's like they put everything into whatever they have, or that's their outlet perhaps for them, or maybe they just don't give a shit. And so they just have that ability to release and go that step further than a lot of their peers and contemporaries can. And, you know, maybe those are the people that leave us some big legacies while they're here and after they're gone too. So, okay, well, we're going to jump into this, and this is going to be interesting. So Brett is doing some tabulations in the background for us again this week. With this much material, I'm intrigued to see what's going to come out on top. I know, speaking to both of the hosts off the air the last 2 weeks as we were prepping for this, there were a lot of songs that we had in consideration for our top 10 list. I think a couple of us even mentioned somewhere in the 20s or maybe even low 30s we were at one point for songs that might have made the list. Joe, you made the point that maybe a lot of these songs were close to equivalent for you.
Yeah, I had it narrowed down to 19, which I put all of them on a playlist, and I kind of threw it on shuffle and been listening to it over the past couple of days to try to narrow it down. And I mean, honestly, even from that 19 that I had, it was pretty impossible for me to really, you know, honestly feel like these are the 10 best songs out of those. And then ranking those was an additional step of impossibility. But I do feel like he had a lot of material that like was just equally great to me. And I mean, weirdly, like, in a weird way, I feel like he is maybe the artist we've podcasted about that I have had the least like personal connection with. But maybe because of that, I don't know, like it was like the hardest for me to narrow it down. You know, because I didn't like, there are a couple songs to me that were like, obviously they have to be on the list, but there was just a lot of material that I thought, you know, was great, and it was just really hard to try to pare that down.
Yeah, Brett, what was your process like trying to narrow these for your list?
Basically I started with I just wrote down, I went through the list of all the released singles off the album. I just wrote all those down, basically all of them. And then a few of those I chopped out fairly early. I was like, that wasn't so great. Then going back through and listening to some of the songs that were not released as singles, and then a few of those made it into the pre-list. I don't think I ever had more than 20 total songs on my list, but this is definitely by far, out of all the top 10 lists that we've done on this podcast, this is by far the hardest one to narrow down for me. Similar to what Joe was just voicing, it just, I'm looking at all these songs, I'm like, this song I have listed 17, yeah, that probably could be up there. Like I can't just say no, that's not going to be up there. And I was like, I mean, I was joking a little bit with you guys like before we started recording that I was like still working on my list like as we were like setting up, and that was like I was kind of joking, but I wasn't like fully joking. Like I was still kind of like looking at this like maybe I need to like switch these around yet. I actually got my wife to try and help me out a bit. So we listened to a bunch of songs last night, and it didn't really, honestly didn't help my list that much because like she had this, like some of the same feelings as I did. But it was really, really difficult to narrow this down. I still don't know if I have it like honestly correct, but
Oh yeah,
that's what it is.
I feel like every one of these we do, like if you ask me the next day, some of the songs could
Yeah.
be different or off the list or higher or whatever. I had the same thing. I was telling the host before we hopped on here that generally I'll listen to an album straight through, and if it's a song that I would immediately, just upon first hearing, maybe listed at like a 7 out of 10 or higher, I'll kind of jot that down on the side. And then I made a list, and that's how I got my like list of 30, whatever it was to start with. And then I kind of whittle those down a little bit as well. And then today, like, I mean, it was earlier today, I didn't have the list at all made other than the ones I had narrowed it down to. So I just listened to one and put it on my Google Doc, and then listened to the next one and said, is this higher? Is this lower? And then put the next one. Is this higher than both of those? Lower than both? Is it go in the middle? And then just kind of repeat that until I finished up here. But I'm pretty happy with my list. I mean, like I said, it could change tomorrow if we did this again, or I don't know. I'm sure there's got to be some gems out there I missed that you'll all mention as well. But anyway, let's jump into this, shall we?
Yeah.
Yes.
I will say that there were 5 albums of the 15 that I didn't like any of the songs strong enough to have even one of them make consideration for the overall list here. So the worst one, Joe, I was teasing you at this one, but the worst one, you guys might disagree at this one, was the first Soundgarden album, Ultra Mega OK. You guys may have some hits off that one that you picked, but my comments for that album said so bad, just noise. But you can.
I don't know if I agree that it was bad, but I mean it definitely sounds like a first album, and
that's a good way.
They still had a lot of stuff to work out.
Sounded like a bunch of dudes in their garage just jamming out, but
yeah.
Anyway. All right, well, we have a couple honorable mentions to get started here this week, as we usually do, and I can go first. That's fine for me. My 13, so my first honorable mention, I guess, just outside the top 10, is Soundgarden from Super Unknown, and this is the song "The Day I Tried to Live." This is another one that I guess I must have heard at some point in the past, but this was really a fun one to go back and listen to again. I know. We'll probably have some debates here tonight as well about how some of these songs from the different eras of Cornell sound, and maybe we'll get into that in a bit here. But this one, I really enjoyed the screaming parts. I've said in past podcasts, I'm really big on when the artist knows when and how to scream in their songs, because that's just the music I usually tend to enjoy in some ways. And this one had some really good notes that they hit with Cornell screaming there. And his voice is very different as well. I guess, and I mentioned that at the beginning here, but at times his voice is very soulful in these songs, and at times it's very whimsy, and then other times it's just like this guttural primal shriek that he does, and it's like you said at the beginning, this is really a range that this guy had, very unique voice, even amongst rockers. So that's my 13 honorable mention. Number 1 here is "The Day I Tried to Live." My number 12 honorable mention, number 2, is from Audioslave's 2005 Out of Exile. This is Dandelion, which is just a really light jam, like barely fits on that album at all, actually, but it's just really a fun song. It's just kind of breezy, and has some good rocking on it as well. Doesn't get too hard, kind of stood out. And then my last honorable mention, number 11 here, is going to be also from that same album from Audioslave. This is Your Time Has Come. No real notes on that one, just a song that I enjoy. So those are my honorables.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a bit amiss to not spend a little bit of time just talking about his voice. I know Joey mentioned a bit, and Cody just did too. And it was just so very unique in that he often sounds like his voice is very strained in what he's doing, like it's like about to break at like any moment, but it also sounds like very powerful, and like it doesn't. It sounds like it should break. Is what you're trying to say, but you also can tell that it's not, because he can definitely hold that, and that's just the natural sound. It's just amazing. But just one thing I was thinking about as I was driving home the other day, I was like how to describe this, and I was like, if somebody like Adele, if her voice is like velvet, and like Lemmy is like sandpaper, then Cornell was like the very highest quality, like well-worn leather. That's what came to mind. Like it's incredibly like supple, but strong and like a bit gruff at the same time. So, anyways, on to my honorable mentions. I have hit one of his solo albums. I have Nearly Forgot My Broken Heart, which the more and more I listen to it, I like it like went higher and higher up my list. I just really started enjoying that. I really appreciate like the lyrics as well. It's like a really well written song that actually like is like cohesive, like coherent, I guess, not just a mumble of like metaphor. I also have Hunger Strike from the Temple of the Dog album. It's like such a 90s song. It's I love it. I've always loved it. And it was, as you said, like the introduction to Eddie Vedder, which the two of them together was great. And it started to like bump it down my list because it literally is just Cornell singing a verse, Vedder singing the exact same verse, and then they just sing like one line for the repeat for the rest of the song. That's the whole song. And even though it's amazing, like I was like, maybe this doesn't need to be my top 10. And then I have, as my other honorable mention, I have "Show Me How to Live" off of I didn't write down which Audioslave album it was, but one of those three. So.
Nice. Well, for my first honorable mention, I have Head Injury, which is off of their debut album that Cody hated. I mean, I do agree that album feels like pretty raw, but I think that is kind of a strength in some ways. And this song particularly, like I actually wrote, it almost sounds like a Guns N' Roses song. It has this kind of like frenzied energy to it that I could like almost picture Axl Rose, doing. But it's just like this loud, fast rock song, and it just kind of gets you going. I mean, not well enough to make my proper top 10 list, but
that's
it almost did.
I wrote sounds like a Guns N' Roses song for a different song.
Oh, that is interesting. My second honorable mention is Been Away Too Long, which is the opening track off of the last Soundgarden album, King Animal, from 2012. And Been Away Too Long, it feels a little bit on the nose considering it was their first album in 16 years.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty solid album opener. I mean, it sounds like a Soundgarden song. And I mean, Cody, you were talking about like possibly discussing how he sounds in like different eras.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting listening to that album, just hearing how the production sounds compared to like the original run of Soundgarden albums. Like a lot of their style is largely the same, but it's just like everything sounds kind of like cleaner and crisper and, because of advances in production and whatnot. And I mean, honestly, like spoiler alert, that's the only track off that album to be like anywhere on my list. But I do think as, the first album in 16 years from an established band, it's actually a pretty solid album. And then my last honorable mention is one that I had a hard time with because it may be my single favorite Chris Cornell performance.
Ooh.
But it is not one of his songs.
Uh-oh.
And I had kind of mentioned in our chat earlier that I was out hiking today and listening to a bunch of these songs, and one of them made me feel kind of emotional, and this is that one. It is Chris Cornell's cover of the Prince classic, Nothing Compares to You. And I'm sure you guys are aware, or at least Cody, you are, that Prince is one of my favorite artists of all time. This is actually one of my favorite songs of all time. Generally, I have mixed feelings about covers of like artists and songs that I love. This is a weird song because it was made most famous by Sinead O'Connor with her cover version. Prince actually never released he wrote it for a like side project he like put together back in the 80s called The Family, which nobody's ever heard of, but that was the original version of the song. Prince himself never released a studio version of the song. His family did after he died. But I mean, this is just kind of a double whammy for me where Chris Cornell released his cover of this the day after Prince died in 2016, which it was April 2016, which was like a year and a month before Chris Cornell himself died. So I was out listening to this song and just thinking about like these two kind of icons, and it just made me feel some stuff. But I think his vocals on this cover are just phenomenal. Like, I don't know if his voice has ever sounded better. And it's a song that I think could be easily overdone, but his version is really just stripped down. It's just all acoustic guitar and vocals. And there is this kind of, Brett, what you're talking about, how his voice sounds like it could break at like any moment. Like, especially on this song, there's just this rawness where it's like, he's like right on the edge, but he just like carries through. And it just, I feel like it makes you feel the song in a different way because it feels so like raw and honest, and it's just phenomenal.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Yeah, before we get to the top 10 proper, I know this is kind of segueing here, but I know that Joe in particular, and I guess I don't know where Brett is on this, but had mentioned that, you know, a lot of the Audioslave stuff later in his career, Joe has some thoughts on that, I guess more because of Tom Morello.
I'm not a fan of Tom Morello. I'm biased because I am like really into guitar. And Tom Morello, in my opinion, I just don't think he's a good guitarist. I think he, as I said in our chat, like he makes noise with guitar, but he doesn't play guitar. And I have just never understood the appeal. I will say, spoiler alert, there might be one or maybe even more Audioslave songs on my list. But yeah, I'm kind of glad we did this because it forced me to go listen to some Audioslave, which I had kind of just reflexively written off because of my dislike of Tom Morello.
There are some songs where he doesn't go full Tom Morello in Audioslave.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll probably talk about some of that, but yeah, I mean, I think like, you know, Kim Thale, the lead guitarist for Soundgarden, I think is a much better guitarist.
Okay, well, I just was reading here too. Apparently, the readers of Guitar World ranked Chris Cornell rock's greatest singer in 2013. I don't know if that's too high of an accolade there. And then he was ranked as number 4 on the all-time heavy metal top 1 vocalist by Hit Parader and the number 9 best lead singer of all time by Rolling Stone. So this is definitely some big accolades here. And yes, Joe, before I hop into my number 10 song, Tom Morello was rated as the 40th greatest guitarist of all time as well by them. So
I know. I mean, Rolling Stone is often wrong. So
so true. But you know, they gather no moss, so they got that going for them. Okay, my number 10 song. My number 10 song is Bad Motorfinger, Soundgarden, 1991. This is the song Outshined, which just had a really good beat to it. It's pretty rocking. I had written in the comments here, which you'll see in a few of these songs tonight, but really reminded me of another band. And in this case, that band is Alice in Chains, which
I can see that.
Full spoiler alert, that is a band I enjoy more than Soundgarden overall, but just good rocking, like really heavy. In this one, I did lyrics for just a couple of these. So Show Me the Power Child, I'd like to say that I'm down on my knees today. Yeah, it gives me butterflies, gives me away till I'm up on my feet again. Hey, I'm feeling outshined, 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 outshined. Just real heavy. I really liked this one. This is like the way I would prefer my Soundgarden to sound on their songs, which I know is not maybe everybody's cup of tea exactly for that hard for Soundgarden. But that's my number 10, Outshined.
All right, I'll jump in here, I suppose. number 10 for me is a song that I actually did not have on my initial list. And then as I was just listening to, actually I was looking at a playlist on YouTube, like his greatest songs playlist. And it was on there and I was like, oh, damn, oh no, this is going to be on my list, isn't it? It's just like I kept moving it up and up. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to squeeze this at 10. And also, so one of the things I went through was like, he does have several, he did like a couple albums of covers, and I was like, do I want to add covers on this list? And in the end, I said, yes, I'm going to allow covers on my list because his voice is that damn good. And a lot of these are better than the originals. So number 10 for me is a cover. It is a cover of Led Zeppelin's Thank You from 1969. And it's just really beautiful. That's the best way I could describe it. I like, in hindsight, I probably would have, if I had been aware of it. I probably had heard the song, but I don't even know if I even had. Like, when I got married, I probably would have petitioned for this to be the song for the first dance for my wife and I, if I had been aware of it. Like, I think it's that level of a song. So, it's just, the song itself is really, I think it's just really good. But his version of it is phenomenal. So that is Thank You at number 10.
Nice. My number 10 is a song that I have a feeling Cody is probably going to put somewhere higher on his list.
You don't know me.
It is by Audioslave, and it is Cochise.
It's my favorite kind of cheese.
I know. This is a song that I actually didn't have anywhere near my list until I was like, kind of as Brett was saying, I was kind of doing some reading and looking at like top 10 Chris Cornell songs, and this kept showing up. And so I checked it out, and it does have a lot of kind of typical Tom Morello, like musically, it kind of sounds like a Rage Against the Machine song to me. But it's got kind of a good groove going on. And more importantly than that, it has, I wrote down Cornell at his screamiest best. I know Cody was talking about how he likes his vocalist to be kind of on the screamier side. And I think this is, we've talked a couple times about Chris Cornell's range. I mean, this whole song is just him kind of like going for it, screaming. And like, there's a part later in the song where he just lets out this like yell, and it's like so powerful. So yeah, I hate to admit it, but I was impressed by an Audioslave song.
There we go. Look at us. Look at us expanding our horizons. Okay, my number 9 is by Audioslave. This is off their 2005 album, though, and this is the song "Doesn't Remind Me" from Out of Exile. And one of the things he did really well, especially with the Audioslave albums, is he masters this kind of very quiet way to sing until he gets to that point where he releases that emotion, and then he just kind of either sings much louder on that point, or as Joe just mentioned, the other song actually just does kind of scream. This one is not necessarily a complex song lyrically, but just again, some of these things in here, the things I've loved, things I've lost, things I've held sacred that I've dropped, I won't lie anymore, you can bet. I don't want to learn what I'll need to forget. So there is, I think there's a lot to the lyrics in some of these later songs as well, but just this idea, of maybe things we hold ourselves, and it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. But that's my number 9. Doesn't Remind Me, Audioslave.
All right, number 9 for me is so definitely one of the struggles with this list was trying to fight back the nostalgia and say, okay, I love these songs, but they don't have to be the top. So this was one that I had much higher at the start, and I was like, no, this has got to go down because other stuff's got to fit in here. So, number 9 for me is from Soundgarden is "Fell on Black Days," and like I feel like it's one of the more kind of moody songs. There's definitely are songs that are kind of darker and dealing with stuff, but this one just kind of feels moody somehow through a lot of parts of it. And another thing we didn't talk about yet, but one of the things that made Soundgarden so unique was their really odd timing with the music and the vocals, and the way that all came together was kind of unique for that time frame. But this song seems to like really illustrate that a lot. If like you're not familiar with that, kind of listen to this and just like pay attention and be like they don't sing in a rhythm that you might normally expect, and the music comes through that way as well. But I'd say like the best part of the song is also like near the end when he just kind of like lets loose with some like really kind of raw emotional kind of vocals. Most of the song is good, but not like excelling, and that's kind of why I bumped it down. So, "Fell on Black Days."
Good pick.
It is a good one. My number 9 is the song that was featured on the soundtrack for the Sega CD game Road Rash. And it also, I believe, was Cody's number 10.
It's Police MIDI number 7.
It is Outshined by Soundgarden. Yeah, I mean, the nostalgia factor is strong on this one for me, mainly because of the Road Rash connection. But also, the main riff of this song is like super simple, but also super effective. It's just this like really heavily distorted, like just dirty, like just heavy riff. And it goes a long way. I also, Cody, you quoted some of the lyrics of this song. The one that has lived in my head since I was like 11 years old is "I'm looking California and feeling Minnesota." Like I've always loved that line. But yeah, I mean, this is one of a handful of songs where like, if I think of Soundgarden, this is just like right there. It's just like a quintessential like 90s grungy, Soundgarden song for me. So there we go.
Okay, back to me. My number 8 is also an Audioslave song. This is off their debut album from 2002, though. And this is "Like a Stone," which I didn't write down anything real meaningful. I just like the way this song sounds, but I was just kind of Googling some song facts about this one, and kind of wishing I hadn't now, because it said Cornell said in an interview that the lyric "Like a Stone" is about death and finding the afterlife. And in a later interview, he said, it's just a guy sitting in a hotel room contemplating death. So that just hit a little harder for me than I knew when I put that at number 8 on my list, considering how he went hanging himself in his hotel room. So, but just, it's a heavy song, but it's not a heavy song, but it is a heavy song. It's not like heavy musically, but it's heavy meaningfully. And that's my number 8, "Like a Stone."
Well, I will continue on with that talk, because that is also my number 8. And one of the things I had written down here was like Audioslave is much better at doing softer songs than Soundgarden was. They just, like, this was a great example of their first album that it's not real complex. It's kind of soft and mellow, and the vocals are that way too. And even though despite being kind of mellow, it really is still very dynamic in the vocals, which is one of the things that I really have always been impressed with Chris Cornell is that he can make a word sound so unique and just melodic, just like any old word. But yeah, it's just really love the sound of this one, and it kind of really opens up at points also, and kind of this classic growly kind of strained voice that he has. Just love this one.
You mentioned that these early Audioslave albums came out in the early 2000s, which is, now we live in basically the era of like autotone with voices. But there are several songs by this band, where he's singing where I genuinely don't know if there's like mechanical things in play with how the words change halfway through a word or one word to the next, or if he actually did some of that with his own throat. I'm not sure, but there's parts where you hear like the music or the word just kind of like catch in his throat, and then like the tone changes of the word. And it's like, did he do that? Or is that, I don't know. 'Cause he certainly was able to manipulate his voice in a lot of different ways. So,
that era was much more the era of autotune, but
2002. I know you're a big new metal guy. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah. Anyway, you guys aren't going to believe this.
We should do a new metal podcast. That'd be fun, Joe.
My number 8 is also Like a Stone, but no, it's not. It's not. It's not. That song almost made my list. I was torn between that and a different song, which we'll get to later, but the other song ended up winning. But that is a great song. My number 8 is actually one that's already been mentioned, Fell on Black Days by Soundgarden. I believe I've established on previous podcasts that I am a sad boy. I tend to like music that's on the kind of like sadder, emo-y side of the bandwidth. And this song, to me, it's kind of about dealing with depression. It's like the lyrics are kind of like everything I do just falls apart or like backfires. And lyrically, I think this might be one of my favorite Soundgarden / Chris Cornell songs. Musically, I just don't think it quite is there. It's not quite as interesting as some of their other stuff, but it's still a pretty solid song.
Okay. We talked about nostalgia a little bit, but there's also excitement on some of these songs. And my number 7 is probably more excitement when it came out, that I was excited, not even necessarily because of the song, but because of what it represented. And this song appears on 2 albums, one of which is a Chris Cornell solo album, and the other of which is a James Bond soundtrack. And that is going to be You Know My Name.
What?
Which I listed as Carry On by Cornell from 2007. But if you listen to that album, I didn't like anything on the album, and then this is stuck on at the very end, and I'm like, wait, what? This doesn't even sound like the rest of the album. They just threw this on there. But just when Casino Royale was going to come back out, and he was just such a unique choice to be one of the Bond themes, I felt like, because, if you go back before Daniel Craig re-entered that franchise, we'll have to talk about that whole thing at some point too, but we had, gotten down to like Madonna doing bizarre dance remix songs, and like there was some genuine drivel that was coming out for Bond themes at that time. And then all of a sudden Cornell came out, and A, it was a kick-ass movie, B, it was like the poker theme going on, and then like C, like, just he could carry the tune better than some of those previous artists had. It's a pretty good song too. Like, it's really fun, kind of carried on. I could be wrong on this, you could disagree with me, but I feel like some of the better Bond themes actually, like, you don't always necessarily hear the title of the Bond theme when you're listening to that song. Maybe like you'll catch it like 2 minutes into the song, or like upon repeat listening, suddenly you'll be like,
Paul McCartney says "Live and Let Die" like 5,000 times in that song, and it's the best Bond song.
Well, he does, but that's not one of the better Bond songs. So anyway, this is You Know My Name by Cornell.
I don't know if I'm more surprised that you have this song on your list or that you like Casino Royale.
Oh, that's probably the best Bond movie, but we can talk about that later.
You're blowing my mind right now, Cody.
I still have not seen the last one, though, to be fair, so I got to watch that yet.
Oh, that would be a hard one to rank.
The Bond movies?
Yikes.
Give me like a lot of warning, because I would like to do a whole rewatch if we ever do that.
I think we could maybe just do the Daniel Craig movies to start, at least.
I definitely think we should do the Bond theme songs at some point, though.
Oh boy. Anyway,
interesting. Okay. Moving on with my number 7. This is another cover that he did. And it's a great song in its own right. It's Cornell. I somehow, well, I'll just go ahead and say it's Patience. It's Patience, the classic Guns N' Roses song. He somehow conveys like an even greater sense of like pain than Axl did in his song, his version. And while being like more beautiful as well, like I just generally like the vocals on his version better. I mean, it just kind of goes with it because his voice is better than Axl's. It just is in a lot of ways. And there's something about the acoustic guitar in this song that I like it. It's more pleasing to me than the original as well. I'm not certain what it is. I think because perhaps there was like, it's just one guitar, and in the original they had like, I don't know, at least two guitars, it sounds like, probably going.
Yeah.
So it's a little like more stripped down and simple. But I mean, it has 100% less whistling, which is a negative. And I would say it definitely rivals the original. It's probably a fraction like less on my list than the original. But really, really close. I really love this version. And the video is really emotional as well. If you haven't seen the video, it's just like a bunch of like photographs just being kind of like tossed out onto a table. It just really seems really, really emotional for me anyways. But anyways, number 7 is Patience.
Brett, you are really, really making me wish I had allowed myself to put covers on my list, because that Prince cover would have been probably my top 3, but my number 7
establish
is
these ground rules beforehand.
No. My number 7 is another Soundgarden song. Shockingly, it is "Pretty Noose," which is the opening track from Down on the Upside. To me, like, the intro to this song is just iconic. There's just the like wah guitar riff going on. I think it's just a hell of a way to open an album. Lyrically, it's maybe not my favorite, but I should say lyrically, it's not the most complex, but like it works for what it's trying to do. And it's just, again, like when I think of that era, this is one of the songs that just kind of pops into my head.
Okay. Well, my number 6 is also a Bond theme. Just kidding, it's not. My number 6 is by a little side project called Audioslave from 2005's Out of Exile. This is Be Yourself, which just has, again, some of these great lyrics. I don't know, maybe it's just that I can hear the lyrics better when I listen to the Audioslave songs versus the Soundgarden songs in some cases. But just this line he has in here about someone falls to pieces, sleeping all alone, someone kills the pain, spinning in the silence, she finally drifts away, someone gets excited in a chapel yard and catches a bouquet, another lays a dozen white roses on a grave. Be yourself is all that you can do. I think a lot of these, especially the ones I hooked on to for the Audioslave songs, probably do have a lot to do with the depression, and his life's kind of coming through in the lyrics of a lot of these songs, which is another reason I like another band, which we'll cover eventually when we force Joe's hand to finally get there, but we'll get there. But yeah, my number 6 is Be Yourself.
Very nice. Yeah, just something I would add in quick on that is like, I would say like, Soundgarden lyrics were often abstract, kind of for the sake of being abstract. And later on, like post Soundgarden, I would say his lyrics are much more abstract in a poetic way. But
That's
yeah,
an interesting point.
Not to go too deep in that, but number 6 for me is also from Audioslave. It is their very first song. It's Cochise, which first song, like timeline wise, not the first song on the album, I don't think, but I just love how this song, like, just the way it starts like winding up. I always love songs where it like starts off with like one instrument and then like layers in something else, and then something else comes in and it just keeps building and building. And this song definitely is really great with that. You've got that, so whatever they did to like make that sound like, it sounds like a helicopter. It's probably Morello doing something wacky on his guitar. I have no idea, but you know, the way that just like builds up, it just comes to a crescendo, and then it's just great. And just for that point out, it's like, yeah, he just like Cornell just explodes out with the vocals, and it's just kind of like nonstop all the way through. It's just really big energy through the whole song. And it was just a really great way to kind of introduce this new supergroup, and just kind of set the stage for what they could do. I really love this one all the way through. That is Cochise at number 6.
Nice. My number 6 is also from Audioslave. Spoiler alert, it's the highest ranked Audioslave song on my list. I was actually torn between this one and Like a Stone, and I ended up going with this one because it feels like a better showcase for Chris Cornell's voice to me. And that is I Am the Highway. I have in my notes here, I'm not sure he ever sounded better. And by that, I mean, just from like a production standpoint, I mean, Cody, you were kind of talking about how maybe on the Audioslave stuff, you can hear his lyrics better. I think there is something to that. Again, I was kind of talking earlier about like with the last Soundgarden album, just the advances in production and stuff. But I mean, this song, I Am the Highway, it starts out, it's just like acoustic guitar, bass, and his voice for a decent amount of time. And I love how just stripped down that is, and then it kind of builds from there. But I just think it is like a phenomenal showcase of his vocal range. You kind of get it all in this song. You know, it starts out, the verses are pretty like him just kind of low key, like just singing in kind of regular range. And then as it builds, you get kind of more the upper register, not quite to the screaming of something like Cochise, but like kind of getting more up there. But yeah, I really don't know if there is a better showcase for his voice than this track.
Yeah, great point. Great point on that one. Well, my number 5 song, as we get to the second half of our lists here, has just been mentioned in the last couple here, and this is Cochise as well. Yeah, it's funny. Brett was just kind of talking about, I don't know if it's like sound effects or however you want to label this, but I was trying to, when I was writing my own notes on this one, I was like, I just said, what a cool intro. This is like, it's almost like a door creaking, but it's like too long to be a door creaking. I'm not really sure what the noise is, but it's just kind of like builds, and you're like, how big is this fucking door? But yeah, and then it just, slams into it. And this is another good one where, I just mentioned again that he has that really smoky, like guttural voice when he's singing in this one, almost to the point where he's like growling at you. And it's just great. And just the go on and save yourself, take it out on me line, repeat it over and over. I enjoy it. I did put it a little bit lower on my list just because I do think that one gets a little repetitive compared to some of the other stuff they have. So it knocks it down a point in my book there, but just a really great song. And really fun one to kind of show what Audioslave was good to be doing here. So Cochise is my number 5.
Love it. All right, number 5 for me is back into with Soundgarden here. It is Burden in My Hand. And what I had written down for this one was that overall it kind of sounds a little less grungy and more pop rock. It's a little bit more of a fun rock song rather than a moody thing. And I don't know what they did, if it was acoustic or electric guitar in this one, but it it definitely doesn't have like the typical growling chords of most of the other songs. I honestly don't know what method they used to do that, but it I just really enjoyed that. And Cornell's vocals on this are really solid, and just another great example of showing his range and what was capable of doing. That's all I got on that. Bird in My Hand, number 5.
Hey, my number 5 is Burden in My Hand by Soundgarden.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Brett. Like, I don't know if I agree that it's like a fun rock song because the lyrics involve like shooting your love, but
That's fair.
I shot my love today. I do agree though. Like, I love the guitar, like especially in the beginning. It sounds acoustic, but it could be just like a cleaner electric. But it does have this kind of like almost jaunty thing going on where it is like definitely more upbeat and kind of like, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from saying it's more kind of like pop rock. But I like that it starts that way, but then it does eventually like kick in with a little more distortion and heaviness. But just, I don't know, for some reason, like this is again just a quintessential Soundgarden song to me. The opening, follow me into the desert as thirsty as you are, like that just for some reason is something that lives in my head rent free. And yeah, I mean, I like structurally, I think you were similar to what you were saying earlier. Like one of my favorite things in songwriting is when a song starts kind of like simpler with maybe just like acoustic guitar or something and builds and this song definitely does that. It starts with that kind of like breezy feeling guitar and then kicks in a little bit more later. Yeah, it's just always kind of been one of my favorite Soundgarden songs.
All right. Well, here we go. My number 4 song is by Audioslave. Just kidding. This one's not by Audioslave.
What?
I know. It's been a while. This is a song I really enjoy by Temple of the Dog by the name of Hunger Strike. Just kidding. It's not Hunger Strike. What? Say hello to heaven. Just kidding. It's not that one either.
What?
Oh my gosh. What is this?
Wait, they have another song?
This is the song Reach Down by Temple of the Dog from 91.
Oh my. Okay.
This is an 11-minute song where they essentially sing for about 4.5, and then they're like, it'd be fun, just a 6-minute jam session, and then we'll come back together at the end. And it's just a lot of fun. Now, I will say if it didn't have the jam session, this probably wouldn't even be anywhere near the honorable mentions. It'd be off the list someplace. But just like hearing them like totally jam out for the 6 minutes in the middle of this is really fun. There are some bizarro lyrics on this one too. If you want to like look into the lyrics for Reach Down, there's some, depending on how you interpret some of that, some kind of weird creepiness going on here. But it's a fun one. It's just a really fun song. So this is my number 4 out of nowhere is Reach Down by Temple of the Dog.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. Okay. Number 4 is a song that I struggled with quite a bit. I didn't know where to put this one. This was another one where I was like, nostalgia's got to take a backseat here a little bit, because the more and more I looked at it, I was like, it definitely would probably be a lot of people's number 1, and I was like, I'm not going to put it there. It just doesn't. I don't feel like it deserves to be there. So number 4 to me is Black Hole Sun. It's probably Soundgarden's most well-known and popular song, I would have to imagine. And to be perfectly clear with it, I love this song. I've always loved this song. Was my wife's. She told me just yesterday that this is but it was one of her favorite songs, not her very favorite song for quite a long time. And the more I listened to it, my honest reaction to this was, it doesn't do anything like exceptionally well. I like the music, but it's not like super catchy. The music on its own isn't like special. The vocals are dynamic as pretty much always, and like weirdly haunting at points. But I wouldn't say it's like his best work. But altogether just gels into a classic that, is as I said, it was probably many people's number one pick. I probably would have to factor in the video as to being, for a lot of people, like of definitely something that boosts that in their consciousness as being a great song, because it was a very weird video. And I didn't mention that in in my, when I was like talking about how I got to know Cornell's music. But as with, I've mentioned multiple times on this podcast, like watching videos on MTV was the way I was introduced to a lot of things in my life. And probably same with Soundgarden. I would say it had to be that was probably the first time I had heard them or seen them. And
Yeah,
that video definitely sticks very well in my head. So
yep.
That's fair. It's also a song I kind of struggled with. We'll get to that later, maybe.
Ooh.
My number 4 is actually off of one of his solo albums. It is from Higher Truth, which I believe was his last like proper solo album. I know that they released that album of covers posthumously we talked about, but the song is Dead Wishes. And I was really kind of caught off guard by this song. I mean, that album in general, there's a lot of kind of like acoustic stuff and it feels kind of more stripped down. But I mean, going back to me talking about jaunty guitar for my last entry, this it really has like a folky, almost country-ish vibe to it. It's got this like, it's just like all acoustic guitar, and there's a really kind of cool picking pattern he does. I'm assuming it's Chris Cornell playing it because it's like he was actually a pretty good guitar player, and he's credited as playing acoustic guitar on the album. But yeah, it's just, I love how stripped down it is. Again, kind of like I talked about with the Prince cover, it really kind of highlights his vocals. Lyrically, I think it's kind of interesting. And honestly, like listening to this song and that album in general, it kind of makes me wish he had done more of that kind of thing. Just kind of like an acoustic singer-songwriter, really putting the lyrics and vocals first kind of thing. I honestly, after this podcast, like that album is probably one that I will go back and listen to, a couple times to really absorb it. I think it's a really kind of interesting, different sort of material from him.
All right. My number 3 is a song where Cornell damn near screams the whole song. So right up my alley. This is Audioslave's debut album from 2002. This is a song, Show Me How to Live. Just the line in there he has, "Is this the cure? Is this the disease?" has always gotten stuck in my head. Like such a universal message, I think, from this song. I don't always note guitar work when I do my little comments on these podcasts either, but I did note that I thought this song had particularly good guitar work in the background. This may be, I'd have to go back and re-listen because I didn't specify exactly why I thought that was, but that actually did stand out to me in this one. But yeah, just another good growler here. Well, it's not really a growler. This is more of a screamer, I would say, by Cornell. But this is Show Me How to Live.
very nice. All right, number 3. Going back with Soundgarden again. This is a song that I've always thought was just really heavy, and apparently it a lot of people thought it was really heavy too because it won a metal award. This is Spoon Man. The first thing I wrote down here was like the guitar riff on this is so heavy. I just love it. It is like in the mix with the drums and the bass, everything, the music to it, it's just really like it's borderline addictive. Like I just like have to keep listening to that over and I just love that so much. And the vocals in the verses are pretty basic. There's nothing really special in there, but the chorus is really great. I mean, I love that. it's just really something about really catchy. And I mean, I gave it bonus points for successfully using spoons in the song to create music, and actually working quite well. So
nice. My number 3 is one that actually started in my honorable mentions and somehow took a massive leap and ended up in 3rd place. And kind of surprised me, but like the more I thought about it, the more just kind of impressive the song is. And it's one of the best James Bond theme songs.
Hey-o!
And it's from the best James Bond movie. I'm saying it. It's true. It is You Know My Name.
Oh.
No, it's You Know My Name by Chris Cornell. I mean, kind of as Cody said, like Chris Cornell is not someone that you necessarily would have expected to do a James Bond theme song. And what I really like about this song is that there's like orchestra in the background. Like it kind of balances like a more classical sound with, you know, the more rock sensibilities of a Chris Cornell.
That's a good point.
Again, it really shows off his whole vocal range. And I mean, to me, the best Bond theme songs are ones that not only function well as a James Bond theme song, but are also good songs that you might want to listen to outside of the movie. And this is one of those for me. Like, I think it's a great song in addition to being a great James Bond theme song. And I mean, I think really it's this high on my list just because what it is so kind of amazing. Like it's crazy that this exists in the first place, that it's like a Chris Cornell Bond theme song that's actually good and like that actually still manages to feel like a James Bond theme song. And it's from the best James Bond movie.
He would have been a fun James Bond.
I don't know about that.
Put that out there. A fun JB, if you will.
Daniel Craig could have done his theme song.
Yeah, that could have been fun.
Only if he did it in character as Benoit Blanc.
Yes.
Boy, what would the lyrics sound like, though?
It'd be about donuts.
Exactly. All right,
donuts
folks.
Hole in a donuts hole.
We are up to my number 2 song. And this is a song that I didn't have in my top 10 originally. And just kept going up the list, just like similar to what Joe just said here. And ended up at number 4 earlier today. And then I was like, let's give it number 3. And then I was like, let's give it number 2. And I just keep moving this up here. This is y'all's favorite character from Andor, Cyril Karn's favorite song that was done by Chris Cornell. And this is from 2005. And the song is called Number 10. This is not a song I've ever listened to many times, but I'm just going to read you my comments as I wrote them listening to this song word for word. God, that background beat and guitar work and vocals. Jesus, soul, blues, rock, funk, up, down, up, down. It's like listening to the goddamn Konami code.
You're just saying words now.
So fucking slinky. This song is like listening to, if you were watching a confident guy, stride left and right down an alley on his way to an exclusive club. And the lyrics here for your Cyril fans from Andor, I picked out, said, I will never leave your side, though you can call me your number 10. You never mind. I'll be your king. I'll be your pawn. I will build you a pedestal and put you upon it, baby. Just when you think you've left me blind, I'll be creeping right up behind. Yeah, we'll keep you in the corner of my eye, the corner of my eye. This is not, I must have listened to this song back in the day because I have this album, but this was a revelation to me to listen to this one. And just every time I listened to it, I probably listened to it like 5 or 6 times, and I enjoyed it more and more every time I listened to it. And it just kept climbing and climbing over all of the very well-established songs I know by both Soundgarden and Audioslave, all the way up to number 2. So that is number 10. Very surprising for me.
Yeah, I would.
Go ahead, Brett.
No, you go ahead.
I'm confused. Is it number 2 or number 1 or number 0?
Yes, it's the 210 area code.
Yeah, I would not have had that anywhere near my radar. But that's what I love. I like hearing these unexpected things here. So
210 area code is San Antonio, apparently. So there's that. That song takes place in San Antonio. All right.
Number 2 for me.
That makes it worse.
Was a song. I had this at my number 1 for a while, and I mean, I jumbled things around a lot. But, ended up at number 2. It is from Soundgarden. It is "The Day I Tried to Live." And I mean, it doesn't take a genius to interpret the lyrics of this song. It's all about failure, trying to do your best, and just feeling like you're failing constantly. And I mean, I think that's, even for people who generally in their lives are doing well and being more or less successful, I think that's like a really powerful message in a lot of people's heads is like you're trying to do better, and just you try things that it just does not work. And that's something that I could definitely feel. I feel that myself a lot of times. And so this is a song that really just kind of struck a chord with me for a long time here. And one thing I wrote here was that the vocals are a little bit less dynamic than some of his other songs. But what I did like is that it seems a bit more like, as far as like some earlier Soundgarden work was, he's singing a bit more than kind of this typical stereotypical like grunge or kind of like melodic speaking rather than singing that he had in some of his other songs. And it seems like it's more like actual, the lyrics are sung much more throughout the song. But there's some others one I just really loved, and I had to stick it here near the top.
It's a good one.
Nice. My number 2 is Enter Sandman.
Again. I almost made that joke earlier. Like, no matter who the podcast is, number 1's always going to be Enter Sandman.
My number 2 is Soundgarden's Enter Sandman, which is Black Hole Sun.
Nice.
I mean,
that's fair.
Like Brett, I struggled with where to put this song. I feel like there's a version of my list where this wasn't even on it. And it's like Enter Sandman, it's difficult because it's probably their best known song. It's probably the song, I would say it's probably their breakthrough song. Like, not that nobody had ever heard of Soundgarden before, but I feel like this is like their crossover song. Again, Brett talked about the music video, like that was a huge thing. So it kind of feels like it's too obvious and like too overdone, but there's a reason for that. It's a great song. For me, it's just like, again, being a guitar fan, like I love the guitar on this song. Just the tone that they get, which apparently was done by using a rotating speaker, which is something that goes back to the like 60s or 70s. I think they originally developed for organs, but it's this thing where there's like in the speaker cabinet for the guitar, there's this like cover that actually rotates around the speaker, and it creates this kind of like whirling sound. And so on the main guitar part of the song, there's that kind of like, to me, it almost sounds like wet or drippy. I don't know, but it's like this just like
a family podcast.
Iconic tone.
Moist.
Oh.
Wet. It's wag. Wet ass guitar. Anyway, and I just love how like this. Again, kind of aided by the music video, but lyrically too, this song just feels like apocalyptic. There's just something weirdly like ominous and dark about it.
Mm-hmm.
And like in that music video, like it's this weird distortion of reality, and like it just feels like wrong and messed up. And I just being like, was this like 95? I'm trying to remember what year this album came out.
Yeah, that's pretty close. 94, 95.
You know, being like probably 12 years old when this came out, it just kind of blew my mind. Yeah, I mean, again, this is probably like the Soundgarden song for most people, so I feel like it has to be up there.
Well, would you look at that? Number ones, huh? Well, my number one song is Black Hole Sun. No, it's not actually. It didn't make my list. It was in consideration for a long time. I had a lot of nostalgic feelings on that one too, but when I listened to it again, I was like, I don't know if I like this one as much as a song as some of the other ones on here. It's not on my list either, Joe, so I will just mention this as a sub note before I say number one too. The song Drawing Flies by Soundgarden is the one that I wrote down, reminded me the most of Guns N' Roses. Really reminded me of the Move Into the City song that they have. Kind of fun. All right. But my number one song is probably, I think, could be interpreted two ways here. And this was already mentioned on one of your lists. I think Joe maybe said this one. This is an Audioslave song yet again. This is off their debut album yet again. And this is I Am the Highway, which I picked as number one. It's I think it was you, Joe, because didn't you say it was his best singing performance? And I'd agree with that. It really, you can hear his range really well. You can hear his just soulfulness with the way he sings really well on this one. You know, it has the lyrics in here too. I'm looking through them as well. I don't think I need to quote any of those, but just kind of this message of like, you know, you are who you are, and you know, you are not going to be responsible for maybe like holding somebody else back, or maybe, you know, like somebody shouldn't get too attached to you because you are just on to the next thing all the time. And it's just like going through life, I think, is one interpretation of this. But, you know, I like this as my number one, I guess, also because thinking just emotionally attached to this song is, you know, maybe the flip of that message, which is, you know, I have to wonder as a listener if like maybe Cornell hadn't seen himself as the highway. Maybe if he had been more attached to something else on this world, you know, maybe his life is still going on today and he's not where he ended up at in 6 years ago in 17. So it's a tragic song. It's a beautiful song at the same time. And I think it really shows his voice really well compared to some of the other songs as well. So I think this one could be taken a couple different ways, but it's a really good song. And I feel okay putting that on my number one for today. So I Am the Highway, number one for me tonight.
Awesome. All right. Number one for me is one that earlier today I had. I as I said, I moved around these songs a lot, and it was at number 5 at one point today. And I kept thinking, I want this at 1. I want to put this at 1. And I was like, do I or don't I? I just don't know what. And what it came down to me was, for a lot of these, when I was trying to put the final list together, was, does it make me feel things? You know, that was like a deciding factor in a lot of cases here. So this one, I'll just get right into it. It is I Am the Highway.
Oh,
I would say it again. I was glad that you brought up, Joe, because I had the same thing written down here, that it really kind of showcases like the beauty and control that Chris Cornell had over his voice. It's one thing I found amazing is that if you listen to it, almost every word that he sings, he like holds a note on it. Like he doesn't just like sing the word and sing it straight out. It's like he holds part of it. And I mean, it seems to me that would be incredibly difficult, because like every word sounds great. It's not like, I don't know. To me, it just seems like it'd be hard to do like so many different words and have them all sound amazing. And it, there's another thing where like there's one word in the song where he like changes pitch on the word like 5 times in a single, like the single singing of that word changes pitch. And it was again, like, and one thing that like Cody, like you had brought up was the way he's able to change on a note. And it sounds like you would just be like turning a dial on something to change from like one pitch to another. And it's so clean and smooth from one note to another. And the ability he had to do that, I think this song really brings that out really well, because it's the singing is just very clean as well. So and the lyrics are definitely, I would say, like open to interpretation, what he was trying to get across there. It kind of it for the most part, it kind of sounds like he's like the method, obviously the obvious line is that I am the highway, like he's facilitating other people somehow. They are getting where they're going and he's helping them get there. I don't know what that meant in his head. And the lyrics aren't like, the lyrics themselves aren't necessarily sad, I wouldn't say, but there's just something in the tone of his voice in this and the way he delivers stuff. I mean, this song has brought me close to tears many times. And I was like, that's why it has to be number 1.
It's just like very matter of fact about it. Like, this is who I am. And, yeah, that's interesting with the highway analogy, like carrying people to their destination. That's not a thought I had on that one, but that's another way to look at it.
Oh,
well, what's your wrong pick, Joe?
Oh man, I don't know if I want to follow you guys after all that. You guys are getting all deep and emotional on me. I mean, my number 1 pick is, I don't think this one has been mentioned before, which kind of surprises me. It also is one that, like, I feel a lot of emotion from. It makes me feel some feelings. And that feeling is wanting to fuck some shit up and punch someone in the face. My number 1 song is Rusty Cage off of Bad Motorfinger.
I get it.
The opening track off of Bad Motorfinger. This is just like a straight ahead rock song. Makes me want to, like I said, punch someone in the face, get into some shit. Also, incidentally, is featured in the opening cinematic of Road Rash.
There it is.
So it has, I admit that I have a strong kind of nostalgia bias for this one, but I just like just the opening kind of dueling guitar riff and like going into, there's like a like echo effect on his vocal when it first comes in. And it just kind of draws you in and then like just kicks your ass. And I love it. There's also like a breakdown that happens like 2/3 of the way through the song. That's kind of cool. And it's kind of this like bassy, like kind of slows things down for a minute, only to then ramp it up again and like destroy your life. I just as like a straight ahead rock and roll song. Like, I think this is hard to beat. It also, to my mind, or to my knowledge, is the only Chris Cornell written song that was covered by Johnny Cash. And it doesn't get much cooler than that. So, but yeah, to me, this is just like number 1 with a bullet. Like, when I think of Chris Cornell and Soundgarden, it's just this song. So.
That's a solid one. Yeah, there were, like we said at the beginning, there were so many songs. I have the whole list of all the songs I didn't put on the top 10 too. There's just so many on here, including a lot of Soundgarden stuff. I know my list was very Audioslave heavy, but there were a lot of Soundgarden songs here, and the ones that just didn't quite make the cut. A couple of the single solo stuff from him as well. A couple of the Temple of the Dog songs as well on here. What did you guys think? Did you listen to the Scream album? I was kind of curious, from 2009.
Is that the like dancey one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one that I kind of skipped through it, and I honestly might go back and listen to it more. That was the most surprising thing I listened to. Like, I had no idea that was a thing.
The only song I wrote down off that album was the song "Part of Me," and I was like, "What the fuck is going on in this song right now?" Like, that's where he's like, to say, "No, that bitch ain't a part of me," but he just like keeps repeating it over and over. And I was like, "What's happening right now?"
That was one of the songs that I didn't listen to the album, and it was one of the songs that came up on like one of his best songs list, and I was like, okay, well, I'll check this out, and I was like, that's a kind of weird song. It's an unexpected vibe, and yeah, just that lyric was like,
that whole album is like, I got into that album and I was kind of like, what? The whole album made me question, like, what is this? And like, then I started reading about it, and apparently he hooked up with Timbaland. He's like a rapper and hip hop producer. Like, that's kind of like, I mean, that's something that's interesting about like looking at his whole career, though, is that he did kind of just explore different things, throughout his entire career. I mean, like I mentioned, his last solo album a lot of it is like really stripped down and kind of like folky almost. And that's not something you might expect from him. And I mean, I have to respect someone who was like, and I mean, I feel like this maybe ultimately ties into the depression and like sadly like why he ended up taking his life, but it kind of feels like throughout his career he was trying to kind of search for himself and like figure out like his identity and his voice, and he made some amazing music as a result of it. But I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely, especially the later solo albums that I hadn't really heard before, other than God, what was it called? Euphoria Morning. When I started, I was in the we keep the message thread open with everybody kind of chatting in the background all the time here, but when I started playing that album, like the first two songs were like "Can't Change Me," I think, and like "Preaching the End of the World" or something. I don't know if they're the first two songs, and I had those two songs burned on some mix CD years and years and years ago, and they started to play, and I was like, holy shit, I totally forgot these songs even existed. But like when they came on, I was like, yeah, I know these songs. But when I got into some of those later solo albums he had, it was, kudos to him for like trying to, if not search for his voice. They say like the good musicians can update their music to like fit what's current. And, he was definitely trying to fit in with some stuff around him at those time periods. I mean, a couple of those albums were, Joe, I could see how you would maybe like some of that later solo stuff, because there were even a few songs that I was like, this is kind of Taylor Swiftish almost in some ways. Like, what's going on here? Which is, not something I'm into per se, but I could see how other people might like this. So, yeah, awesome. Well, I think Brett's going to have some results here, but I guess I'll spit out, since we have done at least one of these before, but we know Cornell unfortunately passed away 6 years ago, I think we said roughly, and it was a suicide by all signs that have been proven. So, if you or anybody else out there is struggling and you need any help, reach out to somebody and try to get the help you need, and at least find somebody's ear you can talk to about what's going on in your life, and hopefully we can avoid some of that stuff from happening in the future. So there's all those good things. But, well, I have to assume, Brett, I didn't do the math, but I have to assume that one song's got to be pretty strong on the contention list here.
I would imagine I Am the Highway is the number one.
It's quite strong on the list. So in total here, we had 20 different songs that we listed between the three of us. Okay. So that's pretty scattered for only three lists here. Which, I mean, the way we were talking earlier, that was really hard to to rank these. That is not shocking at all. So what it comes down to here is we have three songs tied at we'll say they're taking 3, 4, and 5. They all had 12 points. That is Burden in My Hand, Cochise, and You Know My Name.
Nice.
Coming in at number 2 with 16 points was Black Hole Sun. And then with 25 points, 2 first place votes, I Am the Highway, easily taking number 1 spot on this list.
That's a good crosscut of his career in those top 5.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
I can't complain too much about this.
I can't even be mad about Audioslave taking number 1.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, well, I think that's it for us here tonight. You guys have anything else? Parting thoughts? That was fun, honestly. Yeah, like I think we kind of all mentioned this is an artist who we knew and we had listened to, but maybe didn't have like full exposure to and or fully formed thoughts and opinions on this artist, maybe with some of the stuff they've produced until I sat down to listen to it all. So that actually was really fun, which is also why I keep trying to preach to some of the people that don't do the music.
I'm not going to listen to Linkin Park, Cody.
You've already agreed to that, and that's not where I was going with that. But that's the one that's going to hit me really hard for depression. And when we get to that one, you're going to see old Fleming ball up here. But anyway.
Yay.
But this is why I wish some of the non-music hosts would join us once in a while, because I think that fresh perspective is really key, though, just to, be an outsider.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, honestly, that was one of the biggest things I struggled with this episode was just the nostalgia factor. Even though I feel like I had not had deep exposure to much of Chris Cornell's catalog, I definitely had a nostalgic tie to especially the Soundgarden stuff. Yeah. And so it was really hard for me to remove myself from that when I was trying to rank these songs. So I do think it would be interesting to get some people that are, not familiar with anything, in on some of these music ones.
Yeah, I think it'd be really fun this would have been a great one just to have somebody listen to all the eras and be like, what did you enjoy the most out of all that? But whatever, anybody we do could be fun just to get that outside perspective on. It's a commitment though.
This is one I was excited to do this one. When I talk about just our introduction to Chris Cornell, I didn't bring it up then, because I felt like I didn't have a strong attachment to Soundgarden. I probably had more so to Audioslave through those years, but in general, I was always very appreciative of his, the music and the vocals, especially. This is one we have people who are celebrities to us now. It feels like they're dying all the time for us, and this was one not to be I don't know, but a lot of these people, they die. I'm just like, oh, that's sad, but I don't care to be honest. But this was one I vividly remember. I was at work and I got a text from my wife. I'm like, okay. I look over the phone and this was one I physically felt my heart sink because I was just devastated by this. I didn't, as I said, I wasn't I was a huge Soundgarden fan, but just him in general, just his voice, just losing that voice, I felt was just such a loss.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, he's someone who I had always hoped to see live. I love live music, and I think just hearing him perform live would have been amazing. Kind of somewhat ironically, my wife actually did see him live once, and she's not even really a big fan. So
interesting.
Kind of jealous of that. But yeah, it is interesting that all three of us, it feels like, none of us were diehard Chris Cornell or Soundgarden fans. But he still affected all of our lives, and we definitely all, felt that loss. So I think that is kind of interesting. Honestly, my method for preparing for this episode, I kind of skipped through the albums. I would start listening to a song, and if it didn't grip my interest in the first 30 seconds or so, I would kind of skip to the next one and made my list from there. But probably more so than the other music ones we've done so far, just listening to all those little snippets made me want to go back. So now that this episode's done, I feel like I'm gonna go back and like really listen to a lot of his stuff, especially. I hate to admit it, I'm probably gonna go back and listen to the Audioslave albums. But I mean, I feel like it just gave me an even deeper appreciation of him as an artist, and like makes me want to, really absorb his work even more. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not adding anything new here. But the solo stuff, I would say for me, didn't really hit on all cylinders later on. But even like just the Soundgarden stuff, which if you had asked me to name the Soundgarden songs, I probably would have came up with Spoon Man, Black Hole Sun, and Fell on Dark Days. I don't know, Black Days. I don't know if I could have came up with many more than that by title. If I had heard a few more, I might have known what they were. But even those, which didn't make a lot of my top 10, but like they were good. Like it wasn't that they weren't good songs. They just didn't make my 10 list tonight, but they were good. But yeah, I'm partial to the Audioslave. I forget if it was the first or the second one, but I actually had 8 of the whatever one Dandelion's on. I actually had 8 of the 12 tracks on my like list of 30 at one point, and I was like, Jesus, this is ridiculous. And that got whittled down obviously from there, but it's good stuff. It's all good stuff. So if anybody out there somehow hasn't listened to some Chris Cornell, you owe it to yourself to pick some spot and start to listen and see what you enjoy, and then hit us up and let us know what you prefer, how you like your Chris Corn or Pop Cornell or Cornell.
I don't support whatever you're trying to do right now.
That's right, WKPD. We're back here with the top 40, bringing it to you live. All right, I think that's it for tonight, everybody. This was a really enjoyable one. Sounds like for all the hosts here. Yeah, friends occasionally not disagreeing, and I guess we will go out in a tribute to Chris Cornell with our theme song. So you can pick an era and try to make that up as you go. So good luck with that, everybody. We'll see you next time on I'm Going Fondly. Oh, that was Axel. Sorry. No, that was James Hetfield.
Friends on the highway.
Not disagreeing. Not disagreeing.
That bitch gonna. Bye, everybody.
Bye.